The Dread Talons detachment from Codex Chaos Space Marines is one of the most maligned detachments of the edition, featuring a set of rules that often feel confused and play worse. That Night Lords flavored detachment is built around battle shocking your opponent's army, but without too much to show for it or too many tools to help you get there. The good news is that the new Nightmare Hunt detachment aims to fix that, designed to actually make those battle shock mechanics work. Hopefully, second time's the charm. We'd like to thank Games Workshop for providing us with a preview copy of these rules for review purposes. For detachment focuses, codex reviews, and more, subscribe to us here on YouTube. To read more, head to goonhammer.com. Link in the description. Detachment Rule: Terror Made Manifest. In the Battle Shock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit is below starting strength within 12 inches of one or more of your Heretic Astartes units, that enemy unit has to take a Battle Shock test, subtracting 1 from the result. They don't need to take any other tests that phase. Additionally, you gain the following effects. When a battle-shocked enemy unit targets a Heretic Astartes unit in your army, they get -1 to their hit rolls. When a Heretic Astartes unit from your army targets an enemy unit below half strength, they get +1 to hit. When a Heretic Astartes unit from your army targets a battle-shocked enemy unit, they get +1 to wound. This is a monster improvement on Dread Talons, giving you 3 extra effects, one of which doesn't rely on the unit being battle-shocked and as a result gives you much more control. The key units you're going to be relying on in this detachment are Noise Marines, who give -1 to leadership tests on units they shoot, and Raptors, who force battle shock tests in the fight phase and give enemy units -1 to leadership tests within 6 inches. Your other potential option here is the Winged Demon Prince, who can force battle shock tests on a unit he passes over in the movement and charge phases. While it's easy to get roped into trying to do a lot of battle shock tests, it's ultimately best to treat this as something you push a little with the right units rather than going all in on. Chaos Space Marines already have good damage output, so it's more about making good units better than trying to make insane strategies playable. Your bigger goal is getting units down to half strength, but in a pinch, getting them to -1 or -2 leadership and making them test is a solid consolation. The enhancements here are largely overhauled from Dread Talons, and there's some must-take options in here. Greyveil Hex gives the Chaos Lord and their unit stealth, also making them impossible to shoot if they're on an objective and their attacker is 18 inches or further away. This is a side grade from the original enhancement, which gave Lone Operative, but didn't affect the entire unit. This new one is much better for a Lord attached to a unit and can be really solid on a Lord attached to Legionnaires or Raptors who want to take objectives and avoid being shot from across the table. Warp Field Thrusters is back and it's still good, letting you pick up a Jump Pack Lord and their unit and put them back into reserves. It's a great way to pick a unit of Raptors back up turn after turn, then drop them in to kill something. Warp Talons already do this for free, but having a second unit able to do it gives you some good redundancy. Note that this one does not require you to kill something to go back into reserves. Terrorglut Parasite forces a battle shock test on every enemy unit engaged with the bearer, subtracting 1 from the result. Forcing opponents to take a test before the fight phase can turn on the detachment's key abilities and stratagems, and if you put this on a Chaos Lord with Raptors, the unit he hits will have to test twice. This also could be great on a Dark Commune, forcing the test of the Accursed Cultists. Note that the bearer has to get into engagement range for it to work though, not just the attached unit. Sorrow Scent Vulture is a must-take here, even if it's pricey. It gives the bearer's unit a 6-inch scout move, opening them up for aggressive early plays, but it also lets your Jump Pack Lord attach to a Warp Talons unit, giving them some extra punch and the Lord's command point reduction ability. The stratagems here are pretty great, but are largely locked to infantry, so don't expect your vehicles to get too much out of them. Talons Sunk Deep gives one of your infantry units an extra point of AP with their shooting or melee attacks, provided they're targeting a unit that's battle shocked or below half strength. That AP bonus is going to go a long way with your Raptors and Noise Marines. Prey on the Weak is similarly conditional. An infantry unit targeting a unit that's battle shocked or below half strength gets to reroll its hits in either the shooting or the fight phase. Obliterators, Warp Talons, and Raptors all will get good play out of this one. Sadistic Display needs you to jump through a few hoops to work. After destroying an enemy unit in the fight phase, every enemy unit within 6 inches of and visible to your unit, excluding vehicles and monsters, has to take a battle shock test. The timing of it is pretty rough unless you're hoping to get this off at the top of the fight phase and turn off some of your opponent's stratagems. Malicious Surge lets an infantry unit charge after advancing, and that's pretty necessary to make an army like this work. Hurl your Scouting Warp Talons with a Chaos Lord up on turn 1, or just apply pressure wherever, whenever. it's always useful. Relentless Terror lets an infantry unit shoot and charge after falling back. This is another great stratagem, and while it could have been combined into one with Surge, it's worth having for units like Obliterators, Raptors, and Warp Talons that don't really want to be trapped in combat on your turn. Horrific Incursion forces a leadership test at a -1 on an enemy unit within 12 inches of one of your units after they deep strike. It's one of the few ways to force tests to happen before shooting, and you can stack it with the aura from Raptors and Noise Marines for even more fun. Shame it doesn't work on vehicles though. This detachment has a lot in common with Dread Talons, only it's much easier to play and gives you a load more to work with. It's designed to be a much more melee-focused detachment, letting Raptors and Warp Talons do what they do best. Speaking of, you definitely want a unit of Warp Talons in this detachment. The 10-man unit is just one of the game's better units, and the ability to drop in via rapid ingress, charge a unit, kill it, and leave is supercharged by attaching a Chaos Lord to the unit, who reduces the cost of that ingress while also boosting their damage output with a 2-damage Power Fist. This also means you can have them scout at the start of the game, and when you factor in the ability to advance and charge, you suddenly have an entirely new option. Starting the Warp Talons on the table. This is insane, and it opens you up to also have a unit of Raptors led by a Jump Lord with the Warp Field Thrusters enhancement. We don't really recommend big units of Raptors though. While the unit needs the volume to really be a credible melee threat, Raptors just aren't that strong offensively, and having multiple small units to force more tests is probably going to be better for you. In our Dread Talons video, we went over all the units that Chaos Space Marines could take to maximize their leadership and battle shock shenanigans, so we're just going to cover the high points here instead. Consider these the units you actually want to lean on for this. Raptors. These are what the detachment is built around. A 6-inch -1 leadership aura with the ability to force battle shock tests at the start of the fight phase. If you can force a failed test, you'll get +1 to wound and be +1 to hit on your unit, and you can turn on +1 AP with Talons Sunk Deep or rerolls with Prey on the Weak. With Talons Sunk Deep active, then an unpacked 5-model Raptor unit will, on average, actually kill 5 Space Marines in melee. Throw in Sustained Hits 1, and you can up that average to 8. Noise Marines already have amazing shooting, but can tag enemy units to give them -1 to their leadership tests for a turn. Stacking that with Raptor and detachment debuffs can add up quick. They really appreciate the bonuses to hit and wound from the detachment rule too. The Winged Demon Prince doesn't get a lot of love in Chaos Space Marines armies, primarily because he can't advance and charge. And while that's still true here in the Nightmare Hunt detachment, you've got loads of other speedy units to range ahead of him and make that happen, while his other ability finally has a use. Being able to force a battle shock test in the movement and fight phases when you move over a unit gives you one more way to force extra tests, and he's still useful as a melee threat in his own right. Last are Plague Marines. They're just a solid, durable, all-purpose OC2 Marine who has the extra quirk of being able to reduce enemy leadership by 1 within 6 inches if they take a sigil. They're a bit slow unless you stick them in a Rhino, but they're worth consideration over something like Legionaries or a Nemesis Claw. Other than those units, this detachment is going to favor infantry, because that's just where the stratagems give you the most power and flexibility. Obliterators really like this detachment, though it doesn't make them any faster, so you need to put them into deep strike. You want Rhinos for the rest of your units for both speed and the ability to range out and project your 12-inch detachment aura too. The Chosen and Fabius Biobrick are also great units here, more than capable of taking great advantage of the detachment buffs, and Legionaries are also solid. Ironically, the only unit that doesn't get much out of this detachment is the Nemesis Claw, since it already gets buffs to hit and wound from a target being below starting or half strength. When running this detachment, it's important to treat the army's battle shock rule as more of a nice to have than something you desperately need to make happen every turn. Focusing on things like the detachment's enhancements and the ability to advance and charge will probably do more for you in the long run than going all in on trying to battle shock an enemy unit. In other words, don't go charging something with your Raptors you wouldn't normally charge unless it's a desperate situation or you can drop them below half strength first. Now let's go over the strengths and weaknesses. Offensive buffs. You can get +1 to hit and wound and full rerolls to hit with this detachment, and while you have to clear some real hurdles to make those happen, they feel much more possible. Mobility. Advance and charge and fall back and shoot and charge are 2 key buffs that melee armies like this need to operate. Being able to give a unit scout 6 inches is also a big deal here. Jump pack infantry. There's a lot to like here if you're running jump infantry, and being able to throw a Chaos Lord on a unit of Warp Talons is a massive buff that the unit really appreciates. Now unfortunately, we've mentioned this many times, but battle shock effects are unreliable. Your opponent is still going to pass those leadership tests sometimes, and you're going to need to figure out what to do about that. Raptors. This army really feels like it wants to be built around raptors, but they're just not that strong. Maybe when that new kill team comes out and gives them a second heavy melee option, that could change. Enhancement costs. At time of writing, the enhancements are really good, but really expensive. You might be better off leaving some of the goodies at home in favor of more units. The Nightmare Hunt detachment is more or less everything we were hoping the original Dread Talons would be. It has great tools which offer a load of versatility, and they support the army as a melee threat instead of a shooting one. And while you do lose some power by losing the one good stratagem from Dread Talons, you more than make up for it in being able to field deadlier units. You know what's better than chasing down a unit after it falls back? Killing it in the first place and leaving at the end of the fight phase. If you want to read more about this detachment and check out a sample list, head over to goonhammer.com. Now why don't you make your own sadistic display by hitting that subscribe button and supporting us on Patreon to ensure we keep making videos like this one. You also get Discord access, extra features in tabletop battles like faction-specific resource trackers, plus bonus podcasts. I've been Terror Glut McParasite, and she always on my dominus till I knocks. Thanks for watching.